Good morning, everybody. This is going to be part two of our 9/11 interview. In this interview, we're going to be focusing on the paramedic perspective of events at Ground Zero. Joining us today is Mr. Bernie Stafford. Mr. Stafford, thank you for taking the time to talk with me today.
Yes, sir.
Could you please give us some background to your training, the places you've worked, and how you ended up at Ground Zero?
Yes, I am, or I was, before I retired, I was a certified paramedic and nurse, and I also at the time of 9/11, I was also working on for a DMAT team, disaster medical assistance team, Texas 4, as a paramedic, and I was in the process of being certified as a safety officer. So I've got a bit of safety background as well. Um, that is pretty much the reason why I got chosen to go up to 9/11.
Okay. Were you in Texas and you had to go out?
Yes, I was here when I was actually at that time I was teaching at a college, and I was in my office, and one of my students came and got me and said, "Hey, have you watched TV?" And no. And the student center was right outside my door practically. So I went out, and it was packed. And I got there just in time to see the second plane hit.
Oh, wow.
And I thought to myself, well, I wonder if I should pack a bag. And yeah, 3 weeks later, I was there.
I was gonna say, how hard was it to get there?
Well, this was after they lifted flight restrictions. The one thing I was told is, due to the threat level, not to travel in uniform,
Okay.
to travel in only civilian clothes, uh, because the potential threat of, somebody seeing you.
Okay.
And we really didn't have any difficulty. You know, Uncle Sam booked the flight because this is a federal response.
Okay.
And I showed up at DFW Airport and flew into New York LaGuardia, and we were picked up by a van because there were several of us, and then transported into the city. Of course, now you couldn't just drive in. There were checkpoints at every single entrance to the city.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. A lot of people didn't know that. That was not common knowledge. So we got stopped by several NYPD. They were at a checkpoint, and after they saw our federal IDs, they went, "Oh, the typical response of a New Yorker, oh, you guys is here now. Have an 8 day."
Um, what was your immediate reaction upon arriving at Ground Zero?
Oh boy. Um, Disbelief, I'd have to say. The enormity of it was not well represented on TV. So when I actually got there to see the size of it, it was not only the Twin Towers, there was seven other buildings in that complex that were also destroyed, plus an additional two or three more buildings that were completely, they looked like they've been firebombed.
Mm.
It looked like something you would have seen in Germany during World War II. So
Man,
I was just, it was very eye opening. It took some time to process what you were seeing.
can't imagine. Can you describe some of the challenges that you faced while providing care to the first responders?
Well, these guys, the guys in mostly it was the FD NY. They were mainly on the ground zero. They were doing 99% of the work because the demolition teams were doing mainly the heavy equipment, the removal. So these guys were very reluctant to come in. And sometimes they would wait until, they had to do something about it. Because what we saw mainly, believe it or not, this is very strange, a lot of eyes because of the amount of dust and debris on the site, and bad feet.
Hmm.
Being on the site working in boots and socks for 8, 10, 12 hours like they did, it took its toll.
Right.
We went through cases and cases of moleskin.
Hmm. Um, how did you prioritize the care and needs of those who you were assisting?
Well, generally, we were pretty well covered. Um, I was with a team. I was dispatched with a team, or should I say deployed, because I was under orders from the federal government. And the team was out of Alaska. And they'd never been out on anything. They'd just been training. Well, so when we got to ground zero, I didn't know exactly what to expect with this team since they had zero experience on an actual deployment.
Right.
But these guys were just fantastic. So there was, we had 4 or 5 nurses, we had a doctor, we had a psychologist, we had 2 or 3 medics. So we had ample people. So if somebody walked in, they were taken care of immediately, which was the way it should have been.
Yes. I didn't even think about having psychologists on scene.
Yeah, because it was tough. Um, one of the guys, they used to sleep in this. We were stationed in 2 spots on ground zero. We had a big tent, and then we were in a deli. Well, at the deli, when I was over there one day, they used to sleep. There was cots back there, and the firemen would sleep there. They would work ground zero until it was time to go back to their shift. And then they've been doing that for weeks and weeks. Well, there was a guy in the back. There was only a couple of guys that day. It was odd. Normally, all the cots were full and they were sleeping. But there was only one guy, and I was back prowling around looking for moleskin. And I woke him up. And he goes, "What time is it?" And I went, "Oh, it's about 7:30." He goes, "Damn, that's the most time I've slept in 2 weeks."
Oh, wow.
So they were putting in many, many, many hours. Anyway, he got up, and I looked over, and he was using a bungee cord to hold his knife. Well, I thought it was a knife. And I looked over there, or a multi-tool is what I thought it was. I
Hmm.
said, "Watch it, you're going to lose your multi-tool. The flap's up." He goes, "Oh, that's not a multi-tool. I threw that damn thing away. Too heavy. This is a knife I got down on Canal Street." He said, "We've been using it to cut the air packs off of the guys when we find them." And I thought I can't react to that, because if I do, then he's going to realize what he said was probably pretty shocking to most people.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that was what you got a lot of. These guys were kind of almost shell shocked, where it didn't really register how significant and how trying that is to most people.
Most definitely, yeah. Um, what were some of the more memorable moments or impactful moments while you were at Ground Zero?
Well, I'll tell you a kind of funny one. We were sitting outside when we didn't have a patient. We would sit outside at the tent, and we were like as far away from the South Tower, I believe. I mean, it was maybe maybe 100 yards, and we saw a small skid steer come in and start clearing the lobby. And after they started clearing it, you could start to see in the lobby itself. There was a 30-story hotel next to the South Tower. And when the tower went down, it took that thing down to 3-story.
Hmm.
So it was just total destruction of that. And we were looking at it, and I went, "Wow, it is so odd. The pictures are still hanging on the wall, even though a 1,500-foot tower collapsed on it."
Hmm.
And I wasn't the only one. Several of my teammates noted. And I don't know, we got doing something, a patient came in and went back out there, and it wasn't even 20 minutes, and those pictures were gone. It was like, okay, where did they go? Well,
Yeah.
we got to talking to some people. We were getting our chow at a well, it's like a temporary banquet hall they built, and
Hmm.
it was run by one of the hotels. Well, it turned out it was the same hotel that where those pictures were,
Okay.
and they were telling us that corporate wanted them. They were going to corporate, so they ended up. That's where they ended up. Just like, wow, that was eerie.
Yeah. Uh, that's interesting. Uh,
Yeah.
how did you manage your own emotions and stress levels while you were taking care of everybody at Ground Zero?
Well, at that point, I had been a medic for. I also did fire too. So I'd been a medic. I'd been a assistant chief at a fire department, and I knew how to kind of push it back so as not to upset these guys. Because, I mean, they were making statements that would, you know, most people would just go, "What? What?"
Right. Right.
So it's something you acquire.
You kind of compartmentalize everything.
Yes, sir. That is correct. And it continued right to the end. However, there's been a lot of talking since. I've got to speak with there was one other of my teammates up there, but he was working logistics, so we didn't see him much. But we have spent many an hour decompressing for our benefit.
Yeah, absolutely. How did the events at Ground Zero impact your perspective on your role as an EMS worker?
Oh, I thought I'd seen pretty much everything. I had I've worked multiple accidents, multiple patients, multiple ambulances. I even had when I was out at Brendan Fire Department, I had 2 school buses collide,
Mm.
and I had like, I don't know, 48, 52 patients. And so, MCI was nothing. And I also, earlier in my career, when I was working in Arlington, I was one of the responders to DFW Airport for that first Delta crash.
Okay.
And boy, I tell you, that's why I said I thought I had seen it all, but no,
No.
nothing can compare. I mean, there's no way to compare this to anything. In speaking with my brother, and he's a combat veteran. He was 2 tours in Vietnam,
Okay.
wounded twice. He's lucky. He's lucky to be alive. He was telling me, he said, now you get a little bit of the feeling of what it's like to be in combat.
Wow.
Yeah, I'd have to compare it that way because when you started seeing parts of planes, and they pointed out to me where I believe it was a landing gear went through the building and wiped out a whole office of people. It was like 20 or 25 people killed by it. And this is after it had gone through the tower.
Wow.
So the debris field was, as they discovered when I was there, much larger than they expected.
Right.
So they had to expand the lockdown out several blocks. So it was interesting, to say the least, how things changed almost on a daily basis.
Yeah, always changing.
Yes.
What are some lessons you learned from your experiences there?
There's nothing like a good team backing you. If you've got a good team, you can do pretty much anything. And this team, I can't say enough good about them. They were absolutely so trained. And there's another thing: training. Train. You got to do it. You've got to make it second nature. It has to be. And again, when we do our thing, that's what you got to rely on your training. It's got to be automatic.
It has to be second nature.
Absolutely. And you understand, being on the fireside, that you got to just not think about it. You just got to do it.
Yes, sir.
It's like, okay, I do this. I
Yeah,
see this, I do this.
not much time to sit back and dang, you just got to go. You got to do it.
Right. There's no analyzing. That's what the first battalion chief, when he does his walk around.
Right.
Me, I'm dragging the hose. I'm putting the white stuff on the red.
Yes, sir. Um, how did you and your colleagues support each other during and after the rescue efforts?
We really spent some time after hours, several of us together. We would go out and eat, and the for the most part, New York City is normally, I don't want to say it's standoffish, but they're not the most warm and fuzzy at times.
Yes, sir.
And when we would go into a restaurant and eat, if they got an inkling of who we were, you did not pay for the meal.
Oh,
We
wow.
don't, you know, You don't know. It's on us. Uh, and that was something I really noticed about. There was so much support. There was people every single day when we were riding in. We rode in on a city bus with a
Okay.
police escort. And every day when we rode in, there were people, as you got closer into the site, on the side of the road cheering you in. So there was a huge amount of support, huge amount of support. But I tell you, one of the oddest things, I don't know if you've ever been to New York City.
Yes, sir.
You know, it's loud.
Yes,
It's
it is.
all the time loud,
Yes,
horns
sir.
blaring, sirens blaring, people screaming, gunshot. It's everything you can imagine.
Yes, sir.
I remember stepping off that van, shuttle van, at our hotel, and I got off and I went, wait a minute, something's wrong. There was not a sound. You heard an occasional siren. You heard no horns blowing. And that just kind of struck me.
Do you think it was just because people were scared to death to go out?
No, people were out. I think they were just, for a change, they were being kind.
I got you.
They were being, they understood that, this is a bad time. We need to be good to each other.
You need to unite and yeah,
Exactly. Exactly.
yeah, that makes sense. Um, let's see. Is there anything you wish that the public would understand better about the role of EMS and first responders during the disaster?
Well, a lot of people, they don't understand. Now, they do understand fire because fire gets a lot of good press. EMS is kind of the redheaded stepchild. Um, Private EMS is a thing of the past. It's going away. There's no doubt about that. You just have to look at MedStar.
Mm-hmm.
There is no MedStar. It's now Fort Worth Fire Department. They're taking over. And a lot of cities are doing that. They're rolling it into the fire service because the fire service has, um, they have a better command structure. They have I would say, in all aspects of training, uh, even inventory, everything is better. I've worked for some privates, and wow, uh, I just it just amazed me. But people have gotten to understand better, but we still need to do more public education. The more that we can get our citizens involved, the better. So, running that family and friends CPR class is a great idea. Or, a child safety seats,
Mm-hmm.
all of those things. They help the citizens understand what the first responders are doing and um how much they are an asset.
Yeah. Um, question that I want to ask. I interviewed a firefighter the other day who was at Tower 2 when it collapsed.
Mm-hmm.
I want to see what your perspective on this is, but do you think that people in general have forgotten about 9/11?
Yeah, unfortunately.
He said the exact same thing.
I think that it was, it lasted maybe a few months, maybe a year, and then all we have to do is look at the current situation in the country, how divided it is. There's nothing uniting us, and it's sad that all of those people that gave their lives and the people that the first responders who keep giving their lives now, because just as many people have died since 9/11.
Because of all the medical conditions caused by it.
Correct. I have major respiratory issues, and I'm one of the lucky ones because I probably wore my respirator 60-70% of the time I was down there, because
Hmm.
I knew that building was built in the 70s and had a ton of asbestos in it.
Mm.
So that's one of the things they one of the things where we really have to is again, we have to educate. We have to educate the public. We have to make them understand. Remember your history so it doesn't repeat.
Yes, sir.
We
Yep.
don't want to become complacent because it could happen again.
Hopefully not, but yes, it could.
Yes, I truly believe it, because we're in a very trying time right now with everything going on in the Middle East, everything going on with Ukraine and Russia.
Hmm.
There's a big potential that we could get dragged into this mess, which means that we're going to have to be on guard.
Right.
So, yeah, I hope people do remember. There are some that do. There are some cities that do, some recognition on 9/11.
Hmm.
I know in New York, there's a big ceremony going on currently right now at the 9/11 Museum that they do every single year.
Good.
And it's the families of the lost, and they read their names. And I think people have to understand, these people, they did nothing but get up, get dressed, and go to work.
Right. Um, Rewind just a little bit. You were talking about health issues. I've heard that a lot of people are having issues getting the help and support that they need medically. Have you found that to be the case?
No, I got in the system very early.
Okay.
When it was first offered, because we were going to federal health in Fort Worth initially. And then they set up for this because, it turned out they had a lot more than just 200 or 300.
Hmm.
They had thousands. So they set up this. There's been a couple of different administrators, but they set up the 9/11 um, health program, responder health program. So I've been in that from the very beginning. So I'm probably one of the lucky ones because I have my annual exams.
Hmm.
I'm on several medications that the Uncle Sam pays for,
Right.
and I have no issues with it. They've been actually very good at that.
Good.
I'm also currently um, I'm waiting on some funding from um, the actual 9/11 fund for
Mhm.
victims. So yes, it I've been well taken care of.
Good. I'm glad to hear that. Have you ever been back to Ground Zero and seen the museum and whatnot?
No,
Okay. You think?
I I just couldn't bring myself to do it.
Yeah.
You know, it's just now getting to the point where I used to, when it was coming up on 9/11, I was going to have a bad week. And now it's down to maybe, I have a bad half day because it all flashes back. And I mean, this is the kind of thing when you see the carnage that was there, you don't forget it. You
No.
can't.
Yeah. Um, Switching gears, what advice would you give to current or future paramedics?
Ooh. Um, Education.
Education?
Get a degree. That's the way of the world. You're gonna have to have a degree.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I would suggest that you find. I had a partner way back. He was a baby EMT. Hadn't done anything when I got him. He's as green could be. And we worked together for probably 5, 6 months. And he was married. And I said, why are you working this? Because he told me he was I can't remember if they were explorers or junior firefighters on a department. I said, why haven't you applied? Why have you not tested and get on? Well, I thought about it. Several swift kicks in the butt, and he moved,
Yeah.
and he ended up getting hired. And when he banged out at 20, he was a lieutenant.
Mm-hmm.
So he did he did well because he got married, had a couple of kids. One of his sons is also a firefighter.
Cool.
So it runs in the family.
Cool. Um, we're gonna wrap up here. I've got a
Sure.
5 minute warning. Is there
Uh,
anything you'd like to add or talk about the last 5 minutes?
um, no, other than, I appreciate you doing this because getting this out in the public is what needs to be. We need to, like I said, we need to do a lot more public education. And if we can't do that, if we can't improve that, I don't think we're going to get the funding we need because there's always, we always need, there's always a new fire truck needs to be purchased,
Yes.
and they don't give those away.
No, they don't.
And even if you take an ambulance today, oh, you're north of 150.
Yeah, they're not cheap.
Uh, yeah, well, north of 150 with nothing in it. You might get a cot.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think that we've got to do that because the cities are not going to do that.
Right.
It's going to be up to the departments to do that. We did a lot of events when I was at Rendon. We had different breakfasts and, we had raffles and all kinds of things, for fundraising because it was a volunteer organization
Right.
before it became paid, which, by the way, I helped do. They were a total volunteer organization. They're now paid. I think they run either 3 or 4 on shift.
Okay.
And Tarrant County has got a lot of nice equipment. Tarrant County's been one of the few counties I've seen really kick in and help the fire departments. I think they bought them a new engine, 2 brush trucks, 2 ambulances,
Okay. Yeah.
And again, not cheap,
No, not at all.
not at all. So, the better we get our name out there and let people understand what happens, what we do. We're not all just sitting in the recliner at the station.
Right.
It's not nap time.
Right.
It's like training. Put up the ladder, take the ladder down, throw the hose out.
Yes, sir.
It's any number of trainings you could be doing at any time. Hell, you may be out of district training with another department because a lot of mutual aid agreements you want to do that.
Right.
So, and I know how that is because I was on a pretty big. Well, it wasn't a huge fire. It was just a oddball. It was they ground up pecan shells for the oil field for the dry holes. They put it in the hole.
Mm-hmm.
Well, this stuff, if you get it wet, is that it?
Nope.
Or
Sorry.
you like? If you get it wet, it self-ignites.
Oh,
Oh, that was fun.
yeah.
So anytime you got toned out to this place, you were guaranteed to be there at least 24 hours.
Man.
At least. So, and I happened to be in command that day. And one of our mutual aid companies found a drum of, they said, was formaldehyde flake.
Mm.
Well, nice. This now just became a hazmat scene.
Right. Yep.
So again, these kind of things the public doesn't understand. Of course, this one they did because there was a live news conference at 11 o'clock for the news.
Right.
So, but that's the kind of thing, it's got to get out there.
Yes, sir. And I totally agree. We are less than 1 minute.
Good.
So I want to say thank you very much for taking the time to talk to me today.